We're moving on to Senate Bill 876, House Bill 1367, an act to maintain stable housing for families with pets. We have a lot of speakers signed up. Our first set of speakers is a panel. Jessica Simpson, Laura Loney, from the Human Animal Support Services and the Humane Society of the United States. I think they're online. Are Jessica or Lauren available? There we go.
Gosh.
Yeah, go ahead and start.
Should I go first?
Yes, go ahead and start.
Perfect. Thank you, Chair Edwards and Chair Osiero and committee members. My name is Lauren Loney. I'm a staff attorney for the Human Animal Support Services Project. Thank you for the opportunity to testify today. I've been working in housing justice advocacy since 2017 with a deep focus on pets and housing since 2020. Today, I'm testifying in support of Senate 876 and H.1367, but also have written testimony in support of several other bills, including Senate Bills 864, 866, and their companions. At HSUS, we believe that advocating for housing justice and tenants' rights is very deeply intertwined with advocating for companion animals and the families that love them. As this hearing highlighted, there are many changes needed in housing and landlord-tenant policies to achieve racially equitable access to housing. This extends to pet-inclusive housing and pet companionship more broadly. Black and Latino families in particular are disproportionately more likely to be tenants in subsidized rental housing due to systemic racial disparities in income and homeownership rates. And myself and my colleagues have conducted surveys of subsidized housing across several states and have found that there's even less access for people with pets in those subsidized properties because of extremely limiting policies, with only a handful having policies that are pet inclusive. So these bills are one piece of the puzzle to create equity where it currently doesn't exist. Also, taking a step back, research back to the 1990s identifies housing issues as responsible for just under a third of all owner surrender intake at animal shelters, and this is borne out in today's shelter data as well. Despite this long understood relationship between housing insecurity and companion animal welfare, a recent study found that only 7% of rental housing is actually pet inclusive. It's clear that the policies and market rate and subsidized housing addressing families with pets is not working and speaks to the need for stronger public policies aligned with a core value in our society, which is that pets are family. A huge thank you to the bill sponsors and co-sponsors who are championing these issues, and we respectfully request this committee report this legislation favorably as an important step towards ensuring that all families with pets have access to affordable housing for their whole family as they define it. Thank you.
Thank you, Lauren. Now, Jessica.
Hi, thank you.
Hi.
Good afternoon. Good afternoon, chairs, members of the committee. My name is Jessica Simpson. I'm a senior public policy specialist for the Humane Society of the United States. So here on behalf of HSUS and our Massachusetts supporters, I want to thank you for the opportunity to testify today in support of House Bill 1367 and Senate Bill 876. As I expect you'll hear from many of the others that are testifying today, pet ownership has long been a significant obstacle for renters. Tenants report difficulty in finding units that welcome their beloved companions, and that's often due to restrictions on breed, weight, or costly fees. These types of policies can effectively eliminate a large percentage of family dogs from living in most rental units, and thereby can also eliminate the opportunity for a lot of families to live in many rental units. And this has been shown to disproportionately harm low-income families. We found in regions where poverty is concentrated, there are often pet resource deserts. So things like groomers, pet supply shops, or veterinarians are either scarce or non-existent. And disparities in services and resources that people rely on are often a result of a larger systemic issue of housing insecurity. The physical and mental benefits that pets provide us should never hinge upon a person's socioeconomic status. And this legislation, the two bills will help reduce the strain on families to find and maintain housing, as well as on local shelters who often bear the burden of these exploitative policies to keep people and pets together. Over the last couple of years, we've seen a ton of different types of policies and legislation adopted by various legislatures or considered by various legislatures across the country, really acknowledging the importance of the human-animal bond and that aim to increase protections for tenants with pets. 5 states have passed laws to provide more pet-inclusive subsidized housing. 9 states prohibit insurance companies from issuing blanket exclusions that deny, cancel, or non-renew or increase premiums based on the insured's possession of a particular breed of dog. And another 2 states passed laws with protections for pets in the event of an eviction or any other loss of possession of real property. So as families around Massachusetts grapple with the highly competitive rental market and housing shortage, it's really imperative to promote pet-inclusive housing throughout the state. Each of the provisions in these bills will help support people and their pets. I want to thank the bill sponsors for their leadership on this important issue, and again, ask for the committee for a favorable report out. So thank you.
Thank you for your testimony, Jessica. Any questions from the membership from Jessica? Senator, I guess. Seeing none, thank you. I now have Susan Riggs, ASPCA. She is online.
Hi,
Suzanne,
I
looks
wonder
like-
if I
Hi.
can pass for just a second. I've got a technical issue and
Certainly, we'll figure it
back
out.
to me next. Thank you so much.
You got it. You got it. Paul Jenny. Paul Jenny. Fine, Paul, we'll give you a sec. I see you on. Paul Jenny. There you go.
Hey, good morning. How are you? Sorry about that. Technical stuff going on
I
here.
gotcha.
Yeah, my name is Paul Jenny, and I'm from Agawam. Thanks for allowing me to testify. I'm an animal advocate for many years. I'm on the board of Canes Crusade with Kim, and I'm also involved in the rental housing community as well. So I see the issues from both sides of the table as it comes to pets and housing. As everyone said, everyone's an individual, should be treated like one. Just like every rental applicant, they should be appraised on their own merits during the application process. These breed discrimination issues because of insurance issues, or just the idea that some dogs are dangerous, when any dog could really be dangerous, but most aren't because of the responsible owners. We ask our landlords when they evaluate applicants to treat everybody as an individual and their own issues of evictions or criminal records, whatever, that everyone should be treated individually. All pets should be treated individually as well. Finding housing is a monumental task at the best of times, and keeping that housing is imperative. And studies have shown that tenants stay longer, pay more to keep their beloved pets, which is a win-win for landlords when they don't have to constantly turn over housing. It makes a lot more sense. I had a memorable case of Canes Crusade where a resident was being evicted because of the problems with his dog, the end-of-life issues of her bladder. The tenant worked diligently with the housing authority to remedy the issues. I even went to housing court with them, and a lot of work from both sides. We preserved the tenancy. He was allowed to stay. They dismissed the eviction, and he was even allowed another pet when his pet died. That's amazing. That's the things that can change people's lives. A lot of the people that we deal with in our charity, that their pet is the reason they get up in the morning, take that dog out, take their own medication, and get along and survive in their life. So yeah, passing this legislation and preventing breed discrimination is a good policy. It helps landlords, it helps tenants, and it helps all the pets. And I thank you for considering this, honestly. Thank you.
Thank you, Paul. Paul, for your testimony. Is there any questions for Paul from the committee? Seeing none, thank you again. Should I go back to Susan Riggs? Susan, are you ready now?
I think I am. Thank you for your
Perfect.
patience.
Sure, of
And
course.
I'm glad to follow Mr. Jenny. I couldn't have said it better myself. My name is Susan Riggs. I'm Senior Director for Housing Policy for the ASPCA. Good afternoon. I'm speaking today in support of S786 and H1367. We support all of the elements in the bill that acknowledge the unique challenges that pet owners face during a crisis. However, today I want to focus my testimony on the language prohibiting breed and the provision of property liability insurance. In 2012, this esteemed body barred government regulation of dogs based upon breed in favor of a paradigm that addressed the nature of a dog based upon its individual behavior. That act captured the growing consensus among both public and private sector that breed-specific laws have failed. In 2012, the state joined a long list of organizations that have looked at fact and science and rejected breed-based regulation of dogs. The Centers for Disease Control, the American Bar Association, the American Veterinary Medical Association, just to name a few. So I'm going to focus my testimony on the facts and science behind this consensus that has led to the conclusion that regulation by breed is ineffective and highly punitive to both innocent dogs and responsible dog owners. First of all, the identification of breed by appearance is wholly imperfect endeavor, even by experts. The National Canine Research Council has written extensively about the weakness of visual identification of dog breeds, citing numerous expert studies. The overwhelming conclusion is that it is highly flawed. That said, property insurance companies regularly rely upon visual identification of dog breeds. So as the saying goes, garbage in, garbage out. The reliance on breed in determining insurance coverage results in inaccurate and inequitable outcomes that should be corrected. Second, even if the breed of the dog is clear, for example, if they've got papers on the breed, breed is not an accurate indicator of whether a dog will be aggressive or pose a risk to the health and safety. According to the American Veterinary Medical Association, it's the dog's individual history, behavior, general size, number of dogs involved, vulnerability of the people in the household that are bitten, that really determine the severity and whether there'll be a bite injury. Furthermore, scientific studies have determined that the most common causes of fatal dog attacks are preventable factors related to irresponsible dog ownership. Given the variety of factors that have been shown through science to be determinate, it is no surprise that local governments that regulate solely on breed continue to see high bite statistics. Massachusetts has already acknowledged fact and science in an existing dangerous dog law, and yet the law is ineffective as long as households with restricted breeds are denied insurance coverage. It is important to note that this bill would not hinder insurance companies' underwriting of particular risks. To the contrary, it allows insurers latitude in evaluating insurance for such risks. Consistent with existing state law, the bills simply state that each dog must be judged independently based upon its own temperament and behavior in making underwriting decisions. The bill specifically reserve to the insurance companies the use of sound underwriting and actuarial principles reasonably related to actual losses or loss experience with a particular dog. As such, it strikes a reasonable balance between insurers' underwriting autonomy and the various ill effects of insurance companies treating all dogs of certain breeds as bad dogs and punishing the people who live with them. Wisely, Massachusetts state law has for years required government entities to create more effective policies for regulating dangerous dogs. We ask for your aye vote on S.876 and H.1367. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. We're going now to Carlos Rios. I have Carlos Rios. No, I have a Carlos Rios in person who would like to testify on this bill and H1362. That's who I've just called. So just to be clear, this is on the pets right now and 1362. Are you Carlos Rios? Are you testifying on both? Okay. You're testifying on another bill. Okay. So that bill will still come and we'll call that panel. Okay? Okay. No, it's okay. It's perfectly fine. Yep. Well, yeah. Jennifer Wolfe. Okay.
Sorry, I'm very nervous.
No need to be nervous.
Good afternoon. My name is Jennifer Wolfe, and I'm asking you to support S.876 and H.1367. My family is the owner of a 12-year-old pit bull named Bailey. He's an old man, and we could not find any pet-friendly housing that would allow us to take him when our lease was up for our apartment in Hyde Park. I looked and looked, and it ended up that I couldn't find any place, and we were evicted without a lawyer from our house. We became homeless for about 7 months. Finally, we have found, my husband is in Connecticut and I am in Norwood. But a lot of places, they have no exceptions when they say there's no risky breeds. They have no exceptions that a dog is 12, the dog is old, that for anything. They will not have anyone with those dogs. And Boston's already not a very pet friendly city, and it would be really helpful if this bill passes. Currently, the dog in question is in Connecticut, and I'm in Massachusetts with my cat, and I'm renting a room. But we could not give up our dog because we've had him for 10 years, and he's old, and I just couldn't do it. And we became homeless, and I just want to thank you for giving me an opportunity to speak, even though I'm really nervous. I don't know why.
It's okay. You did a great job.
Thank you.
Kevin Cummins, Felicia Rose Grant Program.
Good afternoon, Senate Chair Lydia Edwards, House Chair James Aserio, and all of our elected officials today. My name is Kevin Cummins, and I am the director of the Felicia Rose Grant Program, a grant program under the Cummins Foundation, which awards grants to animal nonprofits that promote animal welfare, education, and the human-animal bond. On March 18, 2015, I walked into the MSPCA Adoption Center in JP looking for a dog. My criteria were it had to be good with children and cats. On my street at the time was an elementary school and a middle school, and I had young nieces and nephews at the time. I also had a senior cat. After seeing what they had for adoption, I fell in love with an 8-month-old tan and white puppy named Felicia, who was listed as a pit lab mix. After talking to my vet, the manager at the time, Melissa Krieger, took her to a room where they had some cats, and she did fine, so I decided that I would take her home. I was back the next morning before the doors opened, ready to take her home with me. When I told my accountant about her, he went to add her to my homeowner's insurance, and I was denied because she has pit bull in her. He did find another insurance company that would allow her to be on the policy, but it took some time and cost me more money. When she turned 2, she was tested by Tufts Paws for People in Grafton to be a therapy dog, and did that for a few years until I found out that I qualified for a service dog, and then I could self-train her. I eventually did a canine DNA because I had 3 people ask if she had Ridgeback in her, and found out that she's 100% American Staffordshire Terrier, one of the 4 breeds that fall into the category as a pit bull. Since creating the grant program, she's been seen by 3 organizations who train service dogs, and all 3 are impressed with her social skills. Last year, I was able to have her tested for the AKC CGC, which is the American Kennel Club Canine Good Citizen, of which she passed and is now on record with the AKC. She's proof positive that pit bulls are not aggressive by nature. I'm asking to pass the housing bill in regards to insurance companies having to look at each case on an individual basis. If a dog is properly socialized, given proper basic training with positive reinforcement, and is in a happy home, then they have a better chance of living a happy life and being a well-behaved dog and a member of the family. If they are raised with violence in the home, are chained up all day, then any dog, regardless of breed, can become aggressive. This is Maverick. He's from Golden Opportunities for Independence in Walpole.
Thank
2 of his brothers are actually on community resource dogs.
Wow.
One in Chelsea and one in Norfolk.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah.
Casey Cochran.
Hi. Not sure if you can. There we go. Hi. Thank you. Can you hear me? Yes.
Yes.
Okay, great. Good afternoon, chairs and members of the committee. I'm Casey Cochran. Thank you for giving me this opportunity. I live in North Reading, Massachusetts. I'm a practicing attorney, but I volunteer with a local rescue as well as the MSPCA, and I'm testifying in support of Senate Bill 876, House Bill 1367. This bill is important to countless animals and humans alike, and you've already heard quite a bit of compelling testimony as to why. The arbitrary discrimination permitted by insurance companies and others causes families to surrender beloved pets, and these beloved pets end up in already overcrowded shelters, confused and with their worlds turned upside down. As you've heard, discriminating based on a perceived breed is not based on science or fact, and in many cases, dog breeds are misidentified even by dog trainers and veterinarians. Certain breeds are thought to be aggressive due to unfair media attention or the way they look, while most of these dogs are just loving pets. I've heard testimony today in support of other bills about evictions and the housing crisis. One thing that would help more people stay in their homes is eliminating these arbitrary restrictions. My own dog, Jax, who's an almost 11-year-old Staffordshire Terrier, more commonly known as a pit bull, was surrendered almost exactly 7 years ago at just shy of 4 years old. He had lived with the same family since he was a puppy, with children, a cat, and another dog. He did nothing wrong. His family lost housing, and they were unable to find another home where Jax could live with them. So they were forced to make a choice, and Jax was left in an unfamiliar place with unfamiliar people. He became very withdrawn during his first month at the shelter, despite the excellent care provided. Then he developed severe manic behavior, the likes of which most trainers have never seen. To give you the very short version, Jax started latching onto things like tree branches and sticks while out on walks. He refused to let go, and he pulled and pulled until he broke whatever he was latched onto. He developed raw elbows from lying down and pulling, and his gums bled. It's impossible to truly understand unless you've seen it. So here was this adult male so-called pit bull with severe manic behavior. Who would want him? 6 months after he was surrendered, my husband and I met him. He liked my husband's face, and that was that. The early days with Jax were extremely challenging, and I'll admit there were times I wondered if we'd made a mistake. The list of things he latched onto is long, and it was a longer road to improvement. But there was no chance we would give Jax back, as we chose him to be a member of our family. He was and is sweet and loving, and he needed a chance. We devoted a lot of time every day to Jax's training, and with the help of trainers and a behaviorist, he slowly improved. Over time, Jax's manic behavior became less frequent and eventually rare. Jax still has special rules, things he cannot do, and places he cannot go, but he loves people and has always been a friendly, exuberant dog. I cannot imagine our lives without Jax, but we are in the minority as a couple who can adopt any dog we want, no matter the supposed breed or how the dog looks. I'm fortunate to have USAA insurance thanks to my late father's service as an Army lieutenant in Vietnam, and there are no dog breed restrictions. Jax is just one example of a dog who was left in a shelter, a very good shelter, who struggled immensely. Although I am very grateful every single day to have Jax in my life, he never should have been left at a shelter. There was no reason for it beyond the way he looks. Please put yourself in the position of someone who is forced to choose between finding housing and keeping a pet. Imagine looking at your dog, who maybe has been your dog for years, and knowing that the next day that dog would wake up in an unfamiliar shelter, never to see you again. Or keeping your dog and facing homelessness, as you just heard. This is not a decision most of us would ever want to make. I also urge you to look through the dog's eyes when you consider this bill. Imagine you're with your family one day, and the next you're in a strange place with strange people, wondering what's going on and where you are, or if you'll ever see your loved ones again. Innocent dogs are being punished and are suffering, while their families are forced to make gut-wrenching decisions for no other reason than the way these dogs look. In a time when we have such a serious housing problem in Massachusetts, arbitrary restrictions certainly do not serve the taxpayers and residents of this Commonwealth, and I urge you to consider supporting this bill. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Up next, we have a panel of Stephanie Harris from the Animal Legal Defense Fund, Kara Holmquist from the MSPCA, Allie Blank from Animal Rescue League of Boston.
Thank you, Chair Edwards, members of the committee. My name is Kara Holmquist. I'm the Director of Advocacy with the MSPCA, and I'm here to testify on the bills before you. I don't want to repeat so much of the information that has already been said. We completely agree with everything and have been working on this issue for a very long time. As one of the previous speakers mentioned, in 2012, we worked on a bill to prevent cities and towns from passing breed-based discrimination. So before that, a city or town could ban certain dogs that might look a certain way. But that was ended in the state with an act of the legislature in 2012. So there's precedent in Massachusetts for moving away from this really outdated idea that you can predict how a dog is going to behave based on its genetics, or really how the dog looks. In 2018, we worked on a bill, the insurance component of these bills, that it passed the Senate in 2018. So there's definitely been movement. And as other folks have said, obviously listening to the testimony today, we're in a housing crisis, but we're in a pet crisis too. Our shelters are full. It is as bad as I almost can remember it being. We're expecting this to last for a while, going into 2024. They're full. And so this is just one more reason that an animal is separated from their family while somebody might lose their housing. I think you did this too, because I saw your list, but I just printed out some of the reasons, that people are surrendering their animals. And just in the last month or so, no pets allowed, landlords say no pets allowed, breed restrictions, moving, can't have pets where he lives, new pet policy, weight limit. And so this is really happening. And I want to just address one part of the bill particularly is that in the 80s, the MSPCA worked on allowing pets in elderly and disabled state housing. We did a pilot program, and then in the late 80s, the law was passed. And one part of this bill would now expand that into all state funded housing. It's worked in elderly and disabled housing, and we think it's really would be a next logical step, given what the state has done before, to move that into additional types of housing. And as a previous speaker mentioned, that I'll just reiterate real quickly, is that this doesn't say, an animal that's a problem, that's causing a disturbance, that is dangerous, is allowed. It's just saying that we're not going to make these blanket policies and judge all dogs one way. We're going to judge them as individuals. So as always, we're happy to work with the committee on any of the language of the bill. Thank you for your time.
Chair Edwards, members of the committee, my name is Allie Blank. I am Director of Advocacy for the Animal Rescue League of Boston. We have animal care and adoption centers in Boston, Dedham, and Brewster, and we try and be helpful across the Commonwealth. One of the things that is our main goal is to keep pets and people together. So all that we do is to try and keep pets in their homes. And we do this, we help provide food, temporary sheltering when we can, but the unfortunate reality is that if housing does not allow these animals, they can't remain with their families. So as Kara just mentioned, overwhelmingly, the top reason why we get animals surrendered into our facilities is housing related reasons, whether that be landlords, whether that be insurance related issues. And we know, unfortunately, that once folks have made the decision to surrender their animals, they've made that decision. There's really no resources that we can provide at that point. And additionally, it's not only just owner surrenders that this applies to. We have a really robust foster network for animals. We know that animals do better outside of the shelter. And unfortunately, we have a really hard time placing large dogs and dogs that are on these breed lists into shelter. Just a couple months ago, one of our foster care coordinators got a phone call from a potential foster asking if they could provide a DNA test for the dog. That being said, I think the ASPCA covered this really well earlier. We know that breed in and of itself is not a good determination of danger. And we also know that those DNA tests they're not regulated at all. They can really, what does that mean to have 10% pit bull or 1% pit bull? So we're sort of operating in a system that is just not allowing for these animals to go into homes. It's not allowing them to stay into homes. And we're even seeing, as Carrie said, it's getting worse. We've had more owner surrenders due to housing in 2023 than we did in all of 2022. So this is something that, we're in a housing crisis generally, and we know that this is impacting pets across the Commonwealth as well. So I ask for your support in this legislation and any other efforts that we can do to keep pets in housing. And I will turn it on over to Sally. Good afternoon, Chair Edwards, members of the committee. My name is Stephanie Harris. I'm a Senior Legislative Affairs Manager for the Animal Legal Defense Fund. It's a national animal protection organization. I cover Massachusetts and a number of other states, and I'm based here in Mass. We keep hearing about how the housing crisis is affecting every community in Massachusetts, and you've begun hearing from dog owners about how that's particularly exacerbated for families with dogs. I'd like to focus my testimony on how breed discriminatory policies facilitate inequity in housing access and fail to prevent liability claims. Lack of affordable housing particularly plagues people who are in crisis, who are attempting to flee domestic violence, facing eviction, or dealing with health crises, as well as people who are already facing race and class discrimination. There are developing conversations about how dog breed discrimination in housing is acting as a stand-in for redlining. Policies of dog breed discrimination are steeped in the discrimination against the humans that society associates with those targeted dogs. Research shows that they come from a place of racist and classist hysteria, not from public health. The media's sensationalization in the 70s and 80s of dog fighting, gang violence, and drug use in urban communities, particularly by people of color, especially young Black men, effectively facilitated a moral panic and cemented a stereotype of dangerous people and their dangerous dogs. Allowing dogs of a certain shape to be considered high risk allows housing and insurance providers to, wittingly or not, perpetuate systemic and institutionalized race and class discrimination. Wealth is an important factor in whether a family can remain housed together with their dog. It is increasingly difficult to find housing without dog breed or size restrictions, and there are fewer options for lower income households. People who have money simply have more options. They can afford more expensive insurance, can move if a breed discriminatory policy is adopted, and can afford pet fees or fines. Separating well-behaved dogs from their families has consequences for families, animals, and communities, including the trauma of displacement and separation. As you've heard, there are also implications for animal shelters and rescues, including the types of dogs that are surrendered and the ease of adopting them out. Policies targeting families with dogs who have no bite history are not based in sound data. Importantly, this bill permits housing providers and insurance companies to use an individual dog's behavior, their bite history, to determine whether an individual dog poses a risk. And while the insurance industry may point to the cost of dog bite claims as a rationale, according to the National Association of Insurance Commissioners data, homeowners insurance losses for property damage made up more than 98% of losses, while total liability losses, where dog incidents fall, were less than 2% of the amount. Shifting away from breed discriminatory policies toward pet-friendly policies is an important factor for improving equity in housing access. This legislation can help more people and their companion animals stay together in safe, secure, and adequately insured homes. Thank you.
Francine Coughlin. Might be online.
Oh, I'm so sorry. She's a friend of mine. She wanted me to say she could not be here, but she submitted a written testimony.
Thank you. Diana Satin, online.
Hello.
Hello.
Good afternoon, Chair Edwards, Chair Arcerio, and members of the committee. Thank you for this time to speak. I just wanted to add that democracy is wonderful, being able to speak like this. My name is Diana Satin, and I'm from Norwood. I'd like to express my appreciation to Representatives Rogers and Montano and former Senator Gopi for sponsoring bills S595, H1037, and H1038, and the representatives, senators, and agencies supporting them. My perspective is as a longtime volunteer at an animal shelter. Through that work, I've experienced how a number of factors affect an animal's behavior. Most important to me about these bills is that people with well-behaved dogs won't need to make a choice between renting a place to live and giving up their dog to a shelter. And shelters need all of their available resources to take in animals that need their help for many other reasons. So this is another reason it's best when owners can keep their dogs. Other people before me have already explained about the factors that go into animals' behavior, and that genetics aren't the sole determinant. So I thank you for listening and for considering giving your support to this important bill.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Seeing no questions, I'm going to Cynthia Tracy. Also online.
Hi, everybody. Yes, thank you. My name's Cynthia Tracy, and I'm from Foxborough. I'm testifying in support of Senate 876, House 1367. Little about me, I'm a leadership development professional who moved from the Midwest to Massachusetts in 2007 to work for our state's largest employer at the time. I support this bill because I've been personally impacted by housing issues here. I'm passionate about this topic because I share animals about to be killed due to shelter overcrowding on social media. I am what is known as an animal networking influencer with almost 10,000 followers. Many of my followers are in Massachusetts, and I personally witness every day how people are impacted and how animal issues truly cross political party lines. I'm also a FEMA-trained rescue volunteer who cared for thousands of dogs at the Katrina, Rita, Harvey, and Ian hurricane sites. During my travel, just brief conversations in the airports demonstrate that people everywhere are becoming more educated about how it's not the dog that's the problem, it's the irresponsible pet owners. Today, I want to share my story about Zamboni. He's a dog I rescued from a shelter in 2001. He was special. He racked up a long list of accomplishments in Wisconsin. For example, after becoming a certified therapy dog, our first visit was to an Alzheimer's unit of a nursing home. When we walked in, a man asked me what his name was. I said Zamboni. I saw the nurses talking. I thought I was in trouble. They told me that was the first time that they had heard the man's voice in over a year since he arrived. During elementary school reading classes, Zamboni gently laid his head on student's lap for an hour while the student read a book to him. Research shows that reading skills improve reading because kids feel more comfortable when they're reading to dogs. During the VA's pet day, Zamboni rested his head on the lap of a veteran in a wheelchair for almost an hour, and later went on to win the tail wagging contest to a cheering crowd of patients. Fast forward to my move to Massachusetts in 2007. I couldn't find a place to rent that would allow Zamboni, and I considered not coming here at all. A doctor offered his summer house until we could find something more permanent because he knew the value Zamboni brought as a therapy dog. I finally found a dog lover in Canton who also approved of my rescue activities. Through the years, Zamboni added more accomplishments like serving as a mascot for the Special Olympics athletes and also helping other pups get their therapy dog certifications. When I was preparing to foster a dog named Brutus, who was surrendered for housing issues, I was heartbroken when I had to break my promise to the rescue because my landlord had just changed insurance and told me that I couldn't have him. I was heartbroken, and then I later learned that Brutus was killed due to an overcrowded shelter. Because my career focuses on helping leaders accelerate productivity and leave a legacy, I thought I'd share the key to success. Make your decisions based on expert perspectives. You've heard some of the top organizations here telling you just now. Please consider listening to some of them, and also legal organizations. Who all oppose any kind of legislation like this because the roots are in the 1980s based on misinformation about dog appearance and correlations to citizen safety. Some of them are, you've heard this, the American Vet Med Association and Bar Association. They're talking about repealing any breed-specific provisions and encourage responsible pet ownership instead. CDC, you heard that, HUD. What about State Farm Insurance? They don't ask about breeds. Any dog can bite, they say. So you all have an opportunity here to be productive by basing your decision on expert opinions and leaving a legacy to join the positive nationwide momentum in passing this bill. Better yet, why don't you think about considering leaving a legacy for Zamboni, the 125-pound black Rottweiler who had the same gentle temperament of any Rottweilers raised by responsible pet owners. If I couldn't find housing in Massachusetts and that physician didn't rent to me, Zam would never have been able to help a 13-year-old Special Olympics athlete overcome her fear of dogs, or helped other doggos, many of whom were pit bulls, by the way, get their therapy dog certifications, which open them up for housing options. Thank you very much for listening to my testimony.
Thank you. Victoria Robb. Line. We'll go. Is this? All right. Going on to Kim George.
Good afternoon. Can you hear me?
Yes.
I am really happy to be here, and I know it's been a long day. I will try to be as brief as possible. My name is Kim George, and I live in Springfield. I'm testifying in support of S.H.76 and S.876 and H.1367. I'm the executive director of Canes Crusade, which is a 501c3 in Springfield. For over 12 years, we've helped vulnerable populations keep their dogs, including the elderly, disabled, veterans, domestic violence survivors, and unhoused. Our Pet Family Housing Initiative advocates for dog owners looking for housing and those with emotional support and service animals. I enthusiastically support all aspects of this bill and all of the comments that have previously been made. In particular, I'd like to focus on the devastating impact that dog breed size, weight, restrictions have on vulnerable individuals in shelters and state-funded public housing. Canes Crusade regularly assists domestic violence survivors and others in urgent need of housing. All too frequently, responsible dog owners are refused housing due to their dog being a certain breed or size, even when they have a legitimate emotional support or service animal, even when protected by the Fair Housing Act or the ADA. For example, we worked with a domestic violence survivor who fled from her home in the Midwest, hitchhiking to Massachusetts with her elderly pit bull type dog. Baby Girl was her legitimate emotional support animal. Both experienced unimaginable trauma from their abuser. We advocated for Baby Girl to remain with her owner in the shelter, but there was increasing tension simply due to the dog being a pit bull. Rather than give up her dog, the woman left and would have been on the street if we didn't fund a temporary room. No long-term housing solution was available that would include Baby Girl, as sweet as she was. This was a dog without incident, without bite history, completely docile. No one should have to give up their dog, live on the street, or in their car because of arbitrary regulations and discrimination based on looks, not behavior, especially our state's most vulnerable. We don't accept discrimination against people, and we shouldn't accept it for our pets. For many, their pet is the reason they get up every day, take their meds, and fight to persevere. This bill will significantly improve the quality of life and well-being of many Massachusetts residents who depend on their pets not only to survive, but to thrive. Thank you for hearing my testimony, for your time and consideration, and I urge you to favorably report this bill out.
Thank you. Questions? Melissa McIsaac in person. Excellent. Thank you. Maggie Houlihan. Person. Okay. Kyle Robb online.
Yes, hello. Can you hear me?
Kyle Robb.
Yes, can you hear me?
Kylie, maybe? Sorry, Kylie, maybe? Sorry. It's Kyle. Oh, yes.
Yes, okay, great, thank you. It is Kyle, thank you. Hello to the chairs, members of the committee, everybody else here testifying today. Thank you for opening this up and allowing people to come in and testify. My name is Kyle Robb. I live in Jamaica Plain, and I've never done anything like this before, so I'm appreciative for the opportunity, and I will keep it very brief because there's been a lot of great testimony and information from other supporters. I'm here to support H.1367 and S.876. I'm not a housing policy expert. I'm not a dog biologist. I'm just a resident of Massachusetts, and I've had a lot of loving and friendly and gentle dogs in my life who are often discriminated against because of their breed, or in reality, really just the way they look. Breed is very hard to determine for most dogs just based on appearance, but there's a lot of discrimination based on appearance alone. I will say a family dog is part of a family. As you've heard from many people today, dogs should never bear the weight of false judgment based on their DNA. Again, as you've heard, that's simply not the best or even a valid measure of a dog's temperament. Family dogs should always have a home with their family. And that's all that I needed to say today. So I will keep it brief. Thank you for hearing my testimony, for your time today. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you very much. Suzanne Diambil?
Yeah, hi. Yeah, hi, I'm Suzanne Dalmonville. Good afternoon, Chair Edwards, Chair Arciero, members of the committee. I'm testifying in support of the bills at hand. And I live in Waltham, a constituent of Senator Barrett. I volunteer in several capacities with the MSPCA, with the advocate, including with the advocacy group, with a program called Rescue Riders, giving rides to and from appointments for dogs and cats with owners who don't have transportation, and also in the low-cost spay-neuter program at the Nevins Farm location. You've heard a lot of great, powerful testimony from dog owners and professionals here today, so I'm just going to make a couple of quick points. At Nevins, I see firsthand that the majority of dogs in the shelter are medium to large-sized dogs. For example, Labrador Retrievers, German Shepherds, Siberian Huskies, Dobermans, Pit Bulls, and Rottweilers. And as you've heard, many of these dogs end up in shelters because their owners have denied access to apartments, including public housing, or have been denied homeowners insurance. These dogs can be difficult to adopt out for the same reasons and end up sitting in shelters. The MSPCA puts shelter dogs through a thorough screening process and would not offer them for adoption if the dog was believed to be an actual risk. And I'm sure this is the case with other shelters in the state. Kara Holmquist from the MSPCA and Susan Riggs mentioned the 2012 legislation that law prohibiting municipalities from discriminating against dogs based on breed. Let's have this carried over to property owners and insurance companies. Thank you for hearing my testimony and your time and consideration.
Thank you very much. I believe Jenny, who we called before, who wasn't here, he's on now. Paul, if you wanted to testify. You did? All right, sorry. Okay. Going on to S878, H1362, an act to secure housing for returning citizens.